When a child is identified as gifted, the baseline assumption is usually that their academic path is going to be smooth. We tend to picture a clear, unobstructed lane where high intellect guarantees a frictionless journey to success. Yet, if you look closely at our classrooms, you will find a jarring contradiction, a specific demographic of brilliant students who are chronically exhausted, emotionally overwhelmed, and in many cases, failing their classes. Without an obvious explanation for this disconnect, frustrated parents and educators often default to character judgments. These struggling students are frequently written off as lazy, careless, or simply accused of not trying hard enough. This behavioral friction identifies a deep mismatch between the student's cognitive operating system and a rigid educational environment. In clinical and educational psychology, this specific profile is known as twice exceptional, or 2E. A 2E student possesses a highly advanced intellect that co-occurs alongside a specific challenge, such as ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or an anxiety disorder. This creates an immediate blind spot in traditional educational structures. Most school systems are built to assess single variables. You are either advanced or you require remedial help. They are not designed to measure conflicting cognitive profiles. As a result, 2E students are trapped in an environment that is largely incapable of seeing their brilliance and their burden at the same time. To understand why these students slip through the cracks, we have to look at a concept called mutual interference, a state where two distinct cognitive traits actively cancel out each other's visible signals. This diagram maps out the first vector of that interference. A student will unconsciously utilize their high intellect to overcompensate. Their giftedness rises up to figure out complex workarounds, successfully flattening out and hiding their learning disability from educators. But the interference goes both ways. Executive dysfunction, a lack of focus, or severe anxiety simultaneously drags down their measurable academic performance. The disability suppresses the outward signs of their intellect, hiding their true capability from the world. When these two forces collide, the system generates a false negative. On standardized tests and report cards, the student simply appears perfectly average or entirely unmotivated. The 2E student's greatest advantage is actively hiding their greatest disadvantage, locking them in an invisible, silent struggle. Maintaining this invisible, average mask just to survive the school day exacts a massive physical and emotional toll. Internally, this often manifests as a punishing perfectionism. Because the student is constantly overcompensating, you will see massive emotional reactions or complete meltdowns over seemingly trivial mistakes. Externally, the contrast is sharp. In a standard classroom, they might project extreme apathy and underachievement, yet at home, they display an intense, relentless focus on a personal passion. Their environment becomes a minefield. They carry deep sensitivity to criticism, a rigid demand for fairness, and high vulnerability to sensory overload. These symptoms represent the visible fallout of chronic cognitive exhaustion caused by the heavy, daily work of unacknowledged masking. Escaping the 2E trap requires moving past basic behavioral assumptions. Identification and support demand licensed professionals and gifted specialists who know how to spot these masked variables. Effective intervention relies on what we can call a dual support blueprint. This model illustrates that you have to treat the disability while simultaneously feeding the high intellect. First, the student requires appropriately challenging, advanced instruction. Without an accelerated pace to keep their intellect engaged, the apathy loop will simply continue. Parallel to that, they need specific structural and psychological interventions. This means legal accommodations through an IEP or 504 plan, paired with cognitive behavioral therapy to actively loosen the grip of perfectionism. Addressing only half of the 2E equation leaves the student either bored and disengaged or overwhelmed and falling behind. Sustained growth requires both tracks to be active at once. The good news is that systemic, accessible support networks are actively expanding to meet this specific need directly within our educational environments. Looking at this network map of Georgia, we can see a real-world infrastructure model solving this problem. MentalSpace School provides K-12 mental health support directly to schools across the state. They operate by embedding dedicated, culturally competent therapist teams for each specific school. These teams offer same-day teletherapy, provide crisis intervention, and extensive family counseling. Crucially, they remove the financial barrier to this specialized care, Services are provided at zero cost through Medicaid, and they are fully integrated with most major insurance networks. This infrastructure ensures that 2E-aware care is universally accessible to students right where they are, without requiring families to navigate complicated medical systems outside of school hours. When education systems stop punishing the mask and start supporting the complex underlying operating system, 2E students gain the freedom to translate their internal brilliance into external success.